The year is 1415. The fields of France are a sea of mud churned by a relentless autumn rain. Two armies stand poised for battle. On one side, a glittering colossal force of French knights, the very flower of European chivalry, confident in their overwhelming numbers. On the other, a small, weary and disease-ridden English army, trapped with their backs to the wall, far from home. By all accounts, this battle should have been a massacre, a footnote in history. Yet, what happened on this day would defy all military logic, change the course of a 100-year war, and immortalize a small band of brothers. This is the story of the Battle of Agincourt. To understand this impossible victory, we must first go back. Young King Henry V of England had a bold but dangerous ambition to claim the French crown. He landed in Normandy with an army of over 10,000 men and laid siege to the port of Harfleur. The siege was a success, but it was costly. Disease, particularly dysentery, ravaged his ranks. When the gates finally fell, over a third of his army was gone. Trapped deep in enemy territory, Henry's only choice was to march his remaining 6,000 men to the English-held port of Calais, a grueling 200-mile journey through a hostile land. But the French would not let him go so easily. The French army, commanded by Constable Charles shadowed his every move, swelling in size as more nobles and their forces joined the ranks. On October 24, 1415, a cold and rainy St. Crispin's Eve, Henry's tired, hungry and sick army reached a narrow plain near the village of Agincourt, and there, blocking their path to freedom, stood the French. A force estimated at between 20,000 and 30,000 men, the English were trapped. The night was a stark contrast. In the French camp, a confident, even celebratory mood. The knights and nobles believed victory was certain. They gambled away their English prisoners' ransoms before the battle had even begun. They were the finest flower of French chivalry, ready to crush the ragged English. In the English camp, there was silence. Henry V had ordered his men to pray, to confess their sins. They were preparing to die. The numbers were staggering, but Henry knew his men, and he knew their secret weapon. He knew their greatest asset was not their courage, but their skill. Henry V was a brilliant tactician. He had chosen his battlefield with a purpose. He arrayed his army at the narrowest point of the plain, funneling the much larger French force into a tight space. He placed his dismounted knights in the center, and on the flanks he placed his most crucial men, the English and Welsh longbowmen. The longbow was a terrifying weapon. It could fire a volley of arrows with enough force to pierce plate armor. The English longbowmen, many of them hardened veterans, were a force of nature. As they prepared for battle, they drove 6-foot-long stakes into the muddy ground in front of their positions, creating a wall of sharpened wood. The French, overconfident and impatient, chose to lead with their heavily armored knights. But a disastrous problem awaited them. The ground, soaked by a week of rain, was a quagmire. Each step in their heavy armor was an exhausting struggle. The charge was slowed to a crawl. Then came the English signal. The longbowmen, with a terrifying battle cry, began to fire. A hail of arrows, a storm of death, rained down on the French. Each arrow, fired at close range into a dense, struggling mass of men, found its mark. The French knights fell, their horses panicked and bucking, adding to the chaos. The first wave of French knights stumbled into a horrifying bottleneck. Pinned between the wall of sharpened stakes and the mass of their own men pushing from behind, they couldn't fight. They couldn't even stand. They began to suffocate and drown in the mud. Seeing this, the English archers dropped their bows, pulled out their swords, axes and mallets, and advanced into the mud. They were lightly armored and highly mobile. While the French knights struggled in the swamp, the English slaughtered, pushing the bodies into a horrifying, impassable mound. The battle was no longer a charge. It was a desperate, claustrophobic fight for survival in a pit of mud and blood. The battle, which lasted only a few hours, was a catastrophic victory for the English. The French lost over 6,000 men, including much of their highest nobility. The English losses, only a few hundred. The Battle of Agincourt was more than just a victory. It was a psychological and strategic masterstroke. It solidified Henry V's claim to the French throne, crippled the French military for a generation, and became an enduring symbol of English resilience and military ingenuity. It proved that a well-led, disciplined, and technologically superior force could overcome overwhelming numbers. Today, the fields of Agincourt stand quiet, but the mud holds a story of one of history's greatest military upsets. A reminder that in war, as in life, victory isn't always about who has the biggest army. Sometimes it's about who has the genius tactics, the forgotten victory, and the will to fight when the odds are stacked against you. If you want to see more stories of epic battles and genius tactics, be sure to subscribe to War Realm and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you on the battlefield.